Corridors creating a 3D model are all really cool and great to look at in AutoCAD, but what good are they if they don't help us accomplish a design that can be built out in the field? So how are they connected to deliverables for planned production? What we're going to do is we're going to create a surface from our corridor model. And so we're going to open up our drawing here using corridor surfaces, our exercise file 0806. We already have our corridor in the drawing, and I'm going to simply select that corridor, and from the contextual ribbon under Modify Corridor panel, notice Corridor Surfaces. And so we're going to select that, and using the tab there called Surfaces, we're going to create a surface that's connected to the corridor. And so we'll leave it alone as the name of the corridor is Osceola Road. This is a surface, so although it's connected to the corridor, we can use other means to define information, break lines, other points that we can add. And so it's a surface in such a way we apply a style to it as well. But information is going to be linked to the corridor. So far, all we've done is create a surface. We haven't provided it any information for definition. There's two different types of information you can add for definition. One is feature lines. Feature lines are the longitudinal 3D lines that are connecting the points in the same direction as the linear path. So when we begin to think of it, those are really break lines, or the crown of the road, the top of the curb, the hinge point where we are going from cut to fill, and so on and so forth. And so you have this list of all the different types of codes applied to the markers or points found in the subassemblies used in all the assemblies in the corridor. Because Autodesk uses pretty much the same codes wherever possible, this list doesn't get too long or out of hand, but it still is a pretty long list. And so we could find all the different codes that apply: edge of travel way, the crown of the road, the back of the curb, and so on. Interestingly, I've found that links usually work better, especially if you have intersections where two roads or baselines come together. So although it's a bit of a change to the mindset where you think a break line really follows the linear path, whereas a link follows a cross-section, the link information is usually a better way to create a surface. Because I changed the data type, the code list changed. So these are all the codes applied to all the links within all the subassemblies found in all the assemblies in the corridor. I think you pretty much have an idea, though, which link code we're going to use to create a finished grade surface. The top code. So we add that code to our surface definition. Go ahead and click OK. And what kind of surface definition do we have? You see the crown of the road, it hits the edge of our gutter. The gutter is a little bit more of a greater slope than the road itself. And then we find that the contour runs along the actual curb, goes across the top of the curb, and then begins its 2% until it hits the edge of the sidewalk and then daylights in some form. So a very clean, well-defined surface, with one exception. We need a boundary. We have triangles going from all the way across here to all the way here. We need a clean boundary. Now, we mentioned that this is a regular surface. I could draw a boundary and have those triangles, but what about if the corridor changes? Wouldn't it be neat if our boundary was connected to our corridor? Let's do that. Go ahead and select our corridor, and from the Modify Corridor panel, choose Corridor Surfaces again. And we've been working in this tab, but notice there's another tab called Boundaries. The Boundaries tab is going to list every surface that we've created that's connected to the corridor. Now, the simple one that we've created was the top. But you could create another surface connected to the base, the subbase, and so forth. So we're going to go to the Boundaries, we're going to right-click, and these are all the different methods to create a boundary. You can add from a polygon, which is just grabbing a close polyline, which is kind of the same as if we just manually added the boundary to the surface. We can add interactively, which we'll do later. We can add automatically. How do we add automatically? Well, because we'll use the feature line based upon the code of the point that drew those feature lines to define a boundary. But this is the easiest in this case. Corridor extends. Just use the edge of the corridor object as my outer boundary. So we go ahead and add that and make sure it's an outside boundary. We're good to go. Click OK. And you see the surface cleans up and the contours no longer cross because the triangles don't. The actual model of the surface is specific to the road. And so if we look at the surface itself in 3D, it will match the road very closely, and you can see that we have a well-defined surface. Now that we have a well-defined surface, we have contours, we have all this other information, we can create our plan production sheets and provide deliverables to those constructing our design.